The trenches near Lauterbourg were quiet, too quiet for a world newly at war. Captain Henri Valois stood just beyond the fortifications of the Maginot Line, staring east into Germany through a thick mist that clung to the earth like a guilty secret. His fingers twitched against the cold barrel of his rifle, not from nerves, but frustration. The war had begun, yet France waited, watched, whispered. But it did not act. Henri was a career officer, educated in doctrine and discipline, loyal to his country but not blind to its weaknesses. Since the fall of Poland 2 weeks ago, his unit had received no forward orders. Command spoke only of strategic patience and defensive integrity. But in the mess halls and dugouts, soldiers murmured a different truth, that France had been paralyzed by something beyond bureaucracy or fear. Lieutenant Marius Delatour approached from the observation post, his boots silent on the frost-hardened soil. Marius had once been a man of restless energy and biting sarcasm. Now his eyes were dim, and he spoke like a man echoing someone else's words. No change. Enemy positions remain quiet. Same as yesterday, he said. And the day before, Henri replied, not looking at him. It's like we're playing dead. Marius didn't respond immediately. Instead, he withdrew a folded sheet from his coat and handed it to Henri. New transmission from Corps Command. Henri unfolded it slowly. Another routine directive, couched in ambiguity. Maintain position. Monitor enemy morale. Restrict patrols to designated sectors. He studied the signature line. It lacked the usual authentication cipher. Why isn't this marked with a standard signature? Henri asked. It came through the encrypted line, but there was no validation packet. Henri frowned. Then it's not an official order. It was relayed by General Rouchard's office directly, Marius said mechanically. Henri turned to look at his lieutenant. Do you believe that? Marius blinked slowly, as if processing the question took more effort than it should have. I follow orders, Captain, that's what I believe. Henri nodded, then dismissed him gently. Something was wrong, beyond policy, beyond fear. It was like the will of France had been extracted, leaving behind a shell that still saluted, but didn't fight. Later that evening, Henri sat alone in his dugout with a steaming tin of coffee and the report spread before him. He tapped his fingers against the paper in an irregular rhythm. The silence in the room interrupted only by the occasional radio hiss. Then it came, a burst of static, followed by a sequence of 5 tones that played once, then again. He stiffened. That wasn't a frequency used by French communications. He scribbled down the pattern. No Morse, no Allied encryption. He replayed it in his mind, too harmonic to be random, too symmetrical to be natural. Henri grabbed his field radio log and cross-checked past anomalies. 3 nights ago, the same tones had interrupted a weather bulletin, but no one had noticed. And the week before that, during a briefing call, a similar tonal distortion had occurred before the channel abruptly died. It wasn't just a glitch. Someone, or something, was transmitting. He walked out to the perimeter, alone. The chill had deepened, and stars hung low and sharp above the tree line. He reached the old trench system, remnants from the last war. Something about the earth here felt heavier, disturbed. He kicked aside some loose gravel and debris, revealing a faint glint beneath the soil. He knelt and brushed it clean, a small metallic cube, black as oil and warm to the touch. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. As his fingers closed around it, a voice, not a sound, but a presence, entered his thoughts. It was not human, but it was not entirely foreign either. It was patient. Conflict must remain constrained. Advancement destabilizes. Humanity is not yet permitted escalation. Henri staggered back, the cube falling into the dirt. He felt his breath return in harsh gulps. The voice had been calm, almost kind, but the implication was chilling. He wasn't imagining things. Something was suppressing France's will to strike, not with weapons, but with suggestion, with influence. Orders were being altered, thoughts were being clouded, and that cube, whatever it was, had confirmed the unthinkable. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he watched the stars and wondered which of them were watching back. The silence of the line wasn't France's failure. It was a leash, and Henri Valois had just found the collar. Henri arrived in Paris under false pretenses. His official orders cited reassignment for intelligence liaison, but the truth was a desperate mission of his own making. The cube remained hidden beneath layers of lead-lined cloth inside his travel pack. Ever since he touched it, his sleep had become fractured. Brief, vivid flashes of cities disintegrating under white fire, of voices not his own arguing in, languages that didn't belong on Earth, and always the whisper, "Your kind is not ready." He made his way to Montmartre, where the old Café Étoile housed more than coffee and poetry. Behind its velvet drapes, tucked behind a wall of jazz posters and old books, worked René Marceau, former war code breaker turned cryptographer for the Service de Renseignement. If there was anyone who could decode a message not meant for human ears, it was René. "Henri Valois," René said, eyes flickering with surprise. "Last I heard, you were freezing near the Rhine. What's happened? Have the Germans finally grown wings?" "Something worse," Henri said, placing a paper-wrapped object on the table. "I need your expertise. Off the record." René studied him a moment, then unwrapped the cube. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, he flinched, eyes widening. "What is this?" "You felt it too," Henri said. "Good. I was beginning to think I'd lost my mind." René turned the cube over carefully, examining its impossibly smooth edges. "This is no human artifact. It's not machined. It's grown, or printed in dimensions beyond our own." He paused, then whispered, "Where did you find it?" "In an old trench just below the Maginot Line. It was buried, hidden, like it didn't want to be found. And it wasn't alone." As Henri explained the tones he'd intercepted, the voice in his mind and Marius's unsettling apathy, René listened silently, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Then he stood and locked the door. "You understand what this implies?" René said. "This is not simply alien. This is intervention. You're suggesting some intelligence, non-human, has influenced our military doctrine?" "I'm not suggesting," Henri said. "I'm telling you. They're blocking us. They don't want us to escalate." René fed the tonal pattern into a prototype analyzer, normally used for intercepting encrypted German transmissions. The machine whirred, sputtered, then settled into a low hum. The tone played again, but this time, the screen displayed a simple waveform, mathematically perfect. "This isn't a code," René murmured. "It's a template, an artificial harmonic. The same way music calms the mind, this tone is dampening cognition. Subtly. Targeted." Henri leaned forward. "Targeted how?" "To suppress aggression. The wavelength corresponds to the prefrontal cortex. Decision-making. Authority figures, senior officers, anyone in the chain of command would be affected. It's pacification, Henri. Elegant, surgical. A whisper that says, 'Not yet.' The implications hit like artillery. France's inaction wasn't cowardice. It was compliance. Manufactured. A leash held by invisible hands. "What do they want from us?" Henri asked. René hesitated, then reached under his desk and pulled out an old dossier marked Project Mantis. Henri's brow furrowed. It was classified at the highest level. Mantis was our attempt at reverse engineering a downed object that crashed in the Pyrenees in 1917. We believed it was an experimental German aircraft. Now I'm not so sure. That craft emitted low-frequency pulses, like this cube. Every analyst exposed to it developed temporary docility or religious hallucinations. Henri exhaled slowly. We've been under surveillance longer than we knew. They're not just watching, Renee said. They're managing us. Henri stood, pacing. So what now? We expose this? Go to the press? To the government? They won't listen, Renee said. They can't. They're already under the influence. If we want to break this, truly sever it, we need to find the transmitter. Henri nodded. It's under the Maginot Line. I saw part of it. The cube must be a relay. Renee leaned in, lowering his voice. Then we have to destroy it. If we sever their control, we take back the war. Henri knew the cost. They'd be labeled traitors, deserters, madmen. But something deeper stirred in his chest, an ancestral instinct that even centuries of diplomacy could not erase. This isn't just about France anymore, he said. It's about humanity. Renee looked down at the cube. Then let's take back our future. Outside, the sky rolled with gray thunderheads. Paris braced under the weight of a quiet war. No one yet knew they were losing. But inside the cafe, two men had decided to fight back. The first thread of the leash had frayed. Night had settled like a curtain over the Ardennes, swallowing light and certainty in equal measure. Henri. And Renee moved silently through the tunnels beneath the Maginot Line, guided only by a faint blue glow emitted from the cube now cradled in a custom-built, lead-lined pouch. It pulsed rhythmically, as though sensing its proximity to the source, its mother signal. Each step deeper into the earth brought with it a heaviness, as if gravity itself conspired to slow them. The map Renee had decrypted led them beyond known fortifications, through an abandoned maintenance shaft hidden behind a sealed door disguised as a collapsed tunnel. The air turned metallic, tinged with static. Henri's every nerve was on fire with unease, not from fear, but from something deeper. A buried instinct telling him he was walking towards something not meant for human eyes. They entered a chamber lined in polished obsidian, clearly not built by French engineers. Walls shimmered with fractal light, forming shifting patterns of constellations. In the center stood a monolith, at least 10 feet tall, humming in harmonic intervals. Floating around it were more cubes, dozens, each rotating, suspended without visible support. Renee's breath caught. We found it. No, Henri said, his voice low. We've been allowed to. A figure stepped forward from the darkness. Human in silhouette, but there was an undeniable wrongness to its presence, its stillness, its symmetry, its eyes that held neither whites nor pupils, but mirrored the stars. You are anomalies, it said, the voice echoing directly into their minds. Your minds resist calibration. Henri stepped in front of Renee. You've subdued our leaders, stopped a nation from defending itself. We have preserved your kind from annihilation, the entity replied. The patterns of your history spiral toward extinction. Our intervention tempers the chaos. France's inaction is balance, not betrayal. Renee's fingers tightened around the disruptor they had built, a waveform destabilizer keyed to the cube's frequency. You're shaping our future without consent. Consent, the being said, tilting its head, is a human concept. Survival is not. The monolith pulsed more intensely, as if reacting to the growing tension. The cubes shifted in orbit, drawing nearer, emitting that same lulling tone Henri remembered from the radio. But he had prepared. Small devices in their helmets emitted counter-harmonics, scrambling the suppression. He raised his weapon, not out of anger but necessity. You don't get to choose our path, not anymore. The figure raised a hand. Energy surged from the monolith, too fast, too bright. Renee activated the disruptor. The room shattered with discordant frequencies, a scream made of geometry and light. The floating cubes spasmed, then cracked, releasing sharp bursts of static as they tumbled to the ground. The monolith cracked down the middle, releasing a deep, resonant tone like a collapsing star. The entity staggered, its form flickering. With one final gesture, it vanished, not in defeat but in withdrawal. The chamber dimmed. The oppressive weight lifted. "It's gone," René whispered. Henri surveyed the remains, fragments of alien machinery now inert. He reached down and picked up a shattered cube, cold, lifeless. "We severed the leash," he said. They made their way back to the surface as dawn broke over the horizon. The sun rose not just on a new day, but on a world whose chains had, however briefly, been broken. Orders soon began arriving again from high command, but they were different. Bolder, more human. France mobilized. History would record it as a slow awakening, a delayed but inevitable push against tyranny. No archive would mention the monolith. No historian would write about the alien influence, but in the quiet corners of intelligence reports, redacted lines hinted at something greater. Henri and René parted ways after the war. One returned to mathematics. The other became a teacher. But every year, on the anniversary of that night, they exchanged a single message. We remembered who we are. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something watched in silence, calculating when next it might be necessary to return.